Hey, Bam! Where's the box cutter at?
It's on the display case next to my guy.
Nuh-uh, that's way too small.
Listen, boss, all you gotta do is just hold it and say, drink Nozarashi.
Drink? Alright. Drink Nozarashi. Holy Alright, this'll work.
Hey everybody, Bam Collectibles here, back for another statue unboxing review for you. Today we got some Bleach in the house with Zaraki Kenpachi in a scale of 1/6 by Shogun Studios. This statue is awesome because it gives you two options in how you can display Kenpachi, which we'll get into later. There was 150 of them made. Actually, there are still some available for order. I will link in the description where you can find those at. On the front of the classy round base, we have the 11th Division symbol because he is the captain for that. And then inside of the base is a long strip of LEDs. The rest of the base is, as seen, a bunch of rocks that are kind of being shattered and cracked because of all the power that Kenpachi is exuding from his body. Now, there'll be an effect that goes on top of the LEDs that let it kind of make a little bit more sense why the rocks are doing what they're doing. And on the back, we'll see the power switch as well as the AC adapter that's going to power those LEDs and turn them on. The base itself is perfectly sized to hold and counterbalance all the weight that's going to be going on top. Insanely enough, the studio sculpted this effect in one giant piece. I love it when there's painted effects on top of the clear resin. It really makes it feel a lot more organic overall, but the rocks are again reinforcing all the power that's going on around Kenpachi. For those that may have some concern about shipping and the packaging, I have to say they did a legendary good job all around with how they were able to protect all the spiky and pointy parts of this piece to make sure it did arrive safely. Then next up, all you'll need is the AC adapter and the power to get it into the wall, and let's see how this thing looks lit up. Definitely the perfect amount of LEDs and clear resin effects to accent the statue without overwhelming or taking over. Here we have the bottom half of Kenpachi Shihakusho. On this foot, we have a notch with a steel rod coming out of the bottom, and on the other foot, just a notch going out of there. The rest of the Shinigami uniform is kind of a darker blue. It almost feels like black from a distance without enough light, but it's got mixtures of black, dark blue to give it some shading. These pieces will be inserted a little bit later as well. I will say the legs are extremely heavy overall. That is probably, again, to support everything that's going on top, but a very thick and solid piece there. To keep those pants up, we do have a bow-looking tie wrap here. The end of it is going to go on the front, with the back having some blue tack on there, so it does go into place nicely. And other than this piece, we have the very long-looking sheath that would house his sword normally. It's going to be out of the case for this one, but they do have to have it on his belt. So this is the bottom half. Nice-looking details that draw out all the different wrappings. There's the notch, how it does attach to there. But there's also this top piece as well that you'll see when we get it installed. It makes it actually look like it's slipping inside of that piece of belt. For thin and fragile pieces like this, it's always great that they do sculpt it separately because you want this stuff staying and arriving safely, and you can't do that unless you do have them separated from the main body. Again, I'm blown away at Shogun's ability to sculpt these very large and intricate pieces and ship them as safe as they did. So we have a steel rod that's going to connect into the legs, hold them safely. On the bottom, pretty much just a standard white tone, but on the back, we have all the outlines and details that we'd see for that jacket normally. And then also all the shading is just amazing looking with the logo on the back there, as we know in the show. And for the arms, we can see some magnets in those sockets to where things will be attaching to later. And that little bit of chest is exposed there and has more of a tanner shade tone to the skin. Once that is keyed in, we'll go ahead and take that top portion of the sheath and just pop it in. For his left arm, it is hanging downward like this in a clenched fist form. Now, there's going to be multiple switch outs on this statue, but this is not going to be one of them. It's going to stay static like this the whole time, while the head and other arm, we're going to see some swap outs for. The right arm is different in that it does have a steel rod and a magnet, and it's also missing that arm because it was sculpted separately. For the rest of his arm, I believe he's holding the bottom portion of the hilt. I'm not a katana expert at all, but I believe that's what it's called. And inside there is a hole where the top portion of the sword will be keying into. Also, there's a bit of wrapping that was sculpted separately. I did have to have a little bit of blue tack in there, and it goes right in. It's extremely lightweight, so you don't need much to get it to hang on there. I know I've been saying sword and katana, but duh, it's his Zanpakuto, the legendary Nozarashi. I've always loved his simplistic design with the jagged edges on there. I can't even imagine how much that would hurt to be cut by compared to just a regular sharp sword with how razor edged it is, but that keys right into the hand there and then also magnetizes right in. Please forgive me, I did notice post-processing that the Zanpakuto was put on backwards, so it should be facing more outward than inward. For the head sculpt, I think they did an amazing job with this. This is the classic Kenpachi that we know and love, the spiky hair with the bells, also that sadistic, blood-hungry grin that he gives out because he loves to fight and battle. So great job by the studio for this one. Definitely the secondary head sculpt, though, is going to be awesome to see. While this head sculpt is classic and nice, right, it's a Kenpachi that I definitely grew up with. I always loved this one. About 17 months after Aizen's defeat, the hair's longer, it's past his shoulders, his eye patch is kind of more floating there, it doesn't have the actual line that's on his face. But I love this portrait a little bit more just for me because I love some of the crazier things that happen with his story later on in the series. Here's again how they look side by side. Let me know in the comments section which head you would prefer, the classic A or the secondary B style. Now, we have to remove this arm for the secondary sword, or the Zanpakuto, that they did include. Before that, though, I want to showcase a quick statue of Ichigo. This is another favorite of mine by Monkey D Studio of Ichigo in a special outfit that we'll showcase later, but it's a much more simplistic statue. I never really intended on showcasing this, but I figured since we're doing Kenpachi, let's just throw in another Ichigo, especially with all the hype of Bleach returning, hopefully this next year. Just like Kenpachi, we have both notches on the feet and also that steel rod to really make sure it sinks into the base. As we go upwards on his outfit, it's definitely a lot more darker than Kenpachi's, with this one having a darker black and gray tone to it. One thing you'll notice if you look really closely is there's a lot of texturing in this statue. There's a notch in the back of the shoulders there where the cape is going to go into, and all those wrappings that are on his arm and around his chest. His hand is in the position that it's in because it's going to be resting the Zanpakuto on his shoulders, or more so on the cape that's going to go over the shoulders. Because his outfit is nowhere near as dynamic as Kenpachi's, they were able to sculpt so much together as one piece. And then here comes the cape that allowed Ichigo to fly. I can't remember the name. I know Yoruichi gave it to him, but anyway, that's slipping my mind right now. Somebody will let me know in the comment section what the name of this was, but I've always loved this outfit. There's that notch with the magnet to where it goes on the back of him. Very easy, just slides on and the magnet and notch just slip into place. Also, to represent the edition size on this statue, we have the substitute Soul Reaper badge. I'd say it's about maybe like 1/3 the scale. It almost would have been cool if they had a life-size scale version that they included so you could have, but really cool extra that they included. Sculpted separately is this pendant with a bit of rope hanging off. I can't remember if there's any significance or a specific name for that piece right there, but it does attach on the right side. Now, Ichigo's head sculpt has got to be one of the hardest to do out there perfectly, and I don't know, it probably is just me, and I apologize if it is. I think there's something a little bit off for his head sculpt. Maybe it's because he's lacking a little bit of emotion, but I guess also in that moment he wasn't really emotional. He was much more confident when he did arrive. But here's that large Zanpakuto that we know and love. On the bottom is a hole where some wrappings will go into, and then taking a close look at the actual blade, it looks amazing. Great colors, all that battle damage going on. Something to mention, on the spine of the sword, there's a magnet impacted into there that will help it rest onto the cape easier and stay into place. Here's that extra wrapping piece that just has a tiny notch at the end that keys into the bottom of the sword. In the series, Ichigo has tons of different looks and outfits, abilities that change his appearance. This is definitely within one of my top 3 favorite, probably because it's so early on. But one thing I have to mention is it's a bit off-centered if you put the nameplate facing forward. You do have to angle it a little bit to get that perfect angle that I think it should have. Kind of weird that it didn't do this in the first place. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of a rabbit trail with Ichigo, but it's time to say, drink Nozarashi. And there we have it, the large Shikai version of his Zanpakuto. Incredible to see how large this thing is. We have a notch on the bottom where wrapping is going to go into, but seriously, I teased this off in the beginning. It is so freaking massive and huge. I was worried when they said they were making a 1/6 scale version of this, that they would maybe scale this down, but nope, not at all. This is actually 1/6 scale. You can see there also it's thick and heavy, so it's not thin, it's really durable, but it also scares me holding it by just the handle. We have some green rope that goes up top. Some of the longer bits of rope are sculpted separately, but here is that massive cleaver. Before we mount that to Kenpachi, we have a few other small bits to include. We have this piece of wrapping that goes in with the notch and tiny steel rod, and also I mentioned before that there's some rope at the top. This is one of two pieces that they sculpted separately. You got a notch and a magnet, so this go on very easily and stay secure. And this is how everything looks installed close up. Those ropes definitely accent everything that's going on just a little bit nicer. And time to get it on Kenpachi. So it goes with a notch on the arm at the very top of the hilt of that sword, and then rests on his shoulder very specifically. Not gonna lie, very scary to install, but it's really sturdy overall for the size and weight. No wonder we had those heavy legs, the wide base, the steel rods, and you can see here, right, the size of this sword compared to that one, if I hold it up, just so much larger, and really what I imagine to be to scale. There he is, all lit up. I love the yellow lines that go across the wall in the background. Super epic for being a museum pose statue where he is just standing there, but it's really not much you can do when his Zanpakuto is that large. Here's the normal version as well, so you can see it to scale. A lot easier to put into a display case if you're trying to. I do not know about you, but I'm excited for the anime to return in 2020. Bleach was a show that I found later on in my adult life and grew a strong affiliation to it. So I'm so thankful to be able to showcase some collectibles on the channel and look forward to what's to come next year. Everybody, I'll see you in the next video. Do what you love and love what you do. Bam out.